Good evening, friends. I'm Valerie, and tonight we're going to break down the thyroid puzzle so you can better understand how these pieces fit together. One very important concept about the thyroid is that it is a system and not just one lab number. Once we understand that bigger picture, we can start seeing why these hormones and cofactors like iodine and selenium all matter together. Usually we hear about TSH, or thyroid stimulating hormone, when looking into thyroid function, but thyroid physiology goes much deeper than that. So tonight we'll walk through what TSH actually is, how T4 converts into T3, how reverse T3 can slow things down, why specific nutrients matter, and how active thyroid hormone affects what happens inside the cells. Most important, I want this to feel understandable, not overwhelming. The presentation has two types of slides, numbered 1 through 6. You'll see the number in the upper left, and the science slide following each of those. The science slides are just visual study guides that you can revisit later. They are complex, so I won't be going over them in detail tonight. I'll be answering any previously submitted questions after the presentation, and then I'll open it up for live discussion. Most people are told their thyroid is either normal or abnormal, based mainly on one marker, TSH. But thyroid physiology is much more complex than that. The thyroid works as an entire system, not just a single lab number. We're going to walk through the major pieces of that system step by step. As I mentioned, TSH, T4, T3, reverse T3, thyroid antibodies, nutrients like iodine, selenium, iron, and zinc, stress physiology, hormone conversion, and what happens at the cellular level. Now, I know some of those terms may sound unfamiliar right now, and that's okay. You don't need to memorize everything. My goal is simply to help you to start see the bigger picture of how those pieces connect together. One of the biggest problems with thyroid screening is that testing often stops very early in the process. Many people are told your thyroid is normal, but sometimes that conclusion was based mainly on TSH alone. And this is an important distinction because TSH is not the active thyroid hormone that's working inside the cells. TSH is actually the signal from the brain telling the thyroid gland to produce hormone. So a more complete question becomes, is the body producing thyroid hormone properly? Is that hormone being converted into its active form? Is active T3 reaching the cells? Are nutrients available for the whole process? Is stress interfering with conversion? Is the body slowing metabolism as a protective response? Because symptoms can begin developing when these downstream processes are struggling, even if an early lab marker still appears normal. Here's the first science slide for you to study on your own. It is a bit simplified, but it's still a complex subject, so give yourself some time to look these slides over. Our goal tonight is simply to help you start seeing how the thyroid works as a connected system, not just a single lab number. Many people are struggling with symptoms that strongly resemble low thyroid function, like fatigue, brain fog, feeling cold, constipation, hair thinning, weight gain, or difficulty losing weight, and they're told your thyroid looks normal. Usually this happens because the testing stopped very early in the process at TSH alone. But remember, TSH is only the signal from the brain asking the thyroid gland to produce hormone. It doesn't tell us whether enough active thyroid hormone is being made, or whether T4 is converting properly into active T3, or whether stress is interfering with the process, or whether nutrients are available, or whether reverse T3 is slowing metabolism, or just how the thyroid hormone is actually working inside the cells. And this is where many people become confused. A person can technically still fall inside a laboratory range while their metabolism and energy production and their capacity to recover are already slowing down, because thyroid function is not just about producing hormones. The body also has to convert the hormone properly. It has to transport it, and then it has to activate it and use it efficiently inside the cells. When thyroid hormone reaches the cells properly, it helps regulate how efficiently the body produces and uses energy. So the bigger picture is not simply, is thyroid hormone present? The bigger question is the entire thyroid pathway functioning properly? And that's why we need to look at the whole system, not just one number. So let's start with the first piece of the thyroid puzzle, TSH. TSH stands for thyroid stimulating hormone. This hormone is produced by the pituitary gland in the brain, and its job is to tell the thyroid gland to produce hormone. You could think of TSH almost like a thermostat signal. If the brain senses that thyroid activity is low, it may send out more TSH to encourage the thyroid to work harder. But here's the important thing to understand. TSH itself is not the active thyroid hormone doing the work inside the cells. It's the signal asking for hormone production. And this is where many people become confused, because conventional thyroid screening often relies very heavily on this marker alone. But a normal TSH does not automatically tell us how much active T3 is actually reaching the cells, or whether T4 is converting properly into T3. You get the picture. In some situations, TSH can also temporarily shift for protective or adaptive reasons. So while TSH is absolutely useful, it's only one piece of the overall thyroid picture. Because the bigger question is not simply what is the signal doing. The bigger question is what happens after the signal. Is hormone being produced properly, converted properly, activated properly, and ultimately is it working efficiently inside the cells? And that's where the rest of the thyroid story begins. Now let's move into the thyroid hormones themselves. The thyroid gland mainly produces a hormone called T4. But T4 is mostly considered a storage hormone. In simple terms, T4 is kind of like the inactive form that still needs to be converted before the body can fully use it. The active hormone is T3. T3 is the hormone the cells actually use. And when T3 reaches the cells properly, it helps regulate metabolism, energy production, body temperature, mood, focus, digestion, recovery, and many other processes throughout the body. This is a very important concept. The body has to activate thyroid hormone before the cells can really use it efficiently. So even if someone is producing enough T4, symptoms can still appear if the body is not properly converting that T4 into active T3. Remember this simple framework. TSH is the signal. T4 is mostly storage. T3 is the active hormone the cells use. And this conversion process can be influenced by many things: chronic stress, inflammation, nutritional deficiencies, liver function, illness, blood sugar instability, and overall physiological stress load. And this is one reason why some people continue feeling exhausted and foggy or symptomatic even when basic thyroid labs appear relatively normal. The issue may not simply be hormone production. The issue may be conversion. Now, I would like to say at this point, the body also needs certain nutrients and raw materials for this thyroid process to work properly. For example, iodine helps the body actually build thyroid hormone. Selenium supports the conversion of T4 into active T3 and also helps protect thyroid tissue during the process. Iron and zinc also help support thyroid signaling and hormone conversion and overall thyroid activity. Now, I know that some people have had to have their thyroid gland removed, but even if the thyroid gland itself is present, the system can still struggle if the body doesn't have the resources needed to run the process efficiently. And this is one reason nutrient depletion and chronic stress, poor diet, inflammation, digestive issues, or long-term physiological stress can sometimes affect thyroid-related symptoms as well. Now, we need to talk about another very important piece of the thyroid puzzle, and that's reverse T3, often called RT3. Earlier, we discussed that T4 needs to be converted into active T3 before the body can fully use it. But the body can also convert T4 into reverse T3 instead. Reverse T3 is considered inactive. It doesn't stimulate metabolism the way active T3 does. So you can think of it almost like a metabolic brake. But this is very important to understand. Reverse T3 is not automatically harmful. In many situations, it can actually be part of the body's adaptive stress response. The body will sometimes increase reverse T3 during times of physiological stress or overwhelm, like, for example, chronic stress, illness, poor sleep, overtraining, blood sugar instability, and other high cortisol states. In these situations, the body may intentionally slow metabolism as a protective response, and this can help explain why some people feel exhausted, mentally foggy, flat, or unmotivated, even when basic thyroid labs still appear relatively normal. So the body is not always simply broken. Sometimes it's adapting to survival signals and stress load. And this is one reason why looking deeper at thyroid conversion, including reverse T3, can sometimes provide a much clearer understanding of thyroid-related symptoms. So as we start bringing these concepts together, I want you to step back and look at the bigger picture. The thyroid is not just one lab marker, and it's not just about producing hormone. Real thyroid function depends on multiple systems working together. Signaling from the brain, hormone production, conversion of T4 into active T3, nutrient availability, cellular response, and overall metabolic balance. And this is why symptoms can still exist even when someone technically falls inside a normal laboratory range, because sometimes the body is intentionally slowing things down in response to inflammation, chronic stress, and overload. That does not mean the symptoms are imaginary, and it does not automatically mean the thyroid gland itself is failing. Sometimes the body is adapting. And this is one reason broader thyroid assessment can sometimes be so valuable, because it helps us look at the larger pattern behind the symptoms instead of focusing on one isolated number. Hopefully what you're seeing now is that thyroid health is deeply connected to the rest of the body. It's connected to stress, sleep, blood sugar regulation, liver function, gut health, energy production. The thyroid is part of the larger physiology picture. And when we understand that bigger picture, the labs and the symptoms often start making much more sense. So thank you all for being here tonight and spending this time with me. I know many people dealing with chronic symptoms have spent a long time feeling confused, overwhelmed, dismissed, or stuck in cycles of trial and error. My hope tonight was simply to help make some of these patterns more understandable. Because when people begin understanding that symptoms may reflect physiology rather than personal failure, it often changes the way they start approaching their health. The body follows patterns, and many of those patterns can be assessed. They can be understood and supported more clearly once we stop looking at symptoms in isolation. If you recognized yourself somewhere in tonight's discussion, the next step is not panic, it's clarity. And that may look like functional testing, a clinical pattern review, improving recovery capacity, understanding your stress physiology, identifying what your body may currently tolerate, or simply continuing to learn how these systems interact. You don't need to figure everything out tonight. This is a very complex subject, and you do not need to force your body into healing. The goal is understanding the pattern first, then supporting the system appropriately. Hopefully tonight helped you start seeing that thyroid symptoms are often connected to a much larger physiology picture, including stress, inflammation, metabolism, blood sugar, and overall resilience. If you'd like to continue learning, you can use the QR code on the screen to explore educational resources, discussions, and services that I mentioned tonight. And if questions came up during the presentation, I'm happy to spend the remaining time discussing them together. And again, thank you for being here.